Hey everybody, and welcome back to Every Movie Ever. We are continuing to review every movie ever made, and I realized something the other day. I've been mostly talking about new movies. We haven't really hit on some of the classics, so we thought we would go back and cover some of the greatest, most classic movies of all time. We're going to start with The Wizard of Oz. What can I say about The Wizard of Oz? Everyone loves this movie. It's a near perfect movie. It's one that like a lot of people my age, I first saw during like the annual TV viewings. I've seen it dozens of times since on Blu-ray and movie theaters on TV. It is a warm hug of a movie. Everything about it is so great. The songs, the performances, the makeup, the production design. This is a 5-star movie all the way. Bringing Up Baby, this is another great classic movie. This one is the Katharine Hepburn, Cary Grant screwball comedy classic, where Katharine Hepburn is a screwball heiress who decides she is in love somewhat with Cary Grant, who's a stuck-up professor. And so the whole movie is her getting him to loosen up. And part of the way that happens is that Katharine Hepburn comes into possession of a leopard named Baby that they need to try and take a little bit of care of. This is a hilarious movie with some really, truly classic stuff. Hepburn and Grant are amazing in it. This is a top-of-the-shelf movie for me, 5 stars. If you didn't get enough of Hepburn and Grant in Bringing Up Baby, you've got to see them in Philadelphia Story. Another great movie. This one also has Jimmy Stewart in it. Not really a screwball comedy per se, more of what we call a comedy of remarriage, which is it's a movie wherein Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant used to be married to each other, and now Cary Grant he's improved his life and he wants Katharine Hepburn back. Jimmy Stewart is also interested in Katharine Hepburn, so you get a great love triangle. This one has a couple of more serious moments than Bringing Up Baby does, but it's no less hilarious, and the serious parts of it, sort of make the whole thing even better, if that's possible. This is a top-notch film. Jimmy Stewart won an Academy Award for it. If you haven't seen it, you gotta see it. It's a big, society kind of a movie where there's going to be a society wedding. Because Katharine Hepburn, there's a third guy I haven't even mentioned to that Katharine Hepburn's engaged to, and Jimmy Stewart and Cary Grant, they don't want her to go through with it. Great, great movie. 5 stars again. Singing in the Rain. Let's do a classic musical with Singing in the Rain. I guess Wizard of Oz is a musical too, but let's do another one. Singing in the Rain is sort of, to me, the pinnacle of the Hollywood studio movie musical. Everything that had come before kind of built up to this. It's extremely innovative and interesting. It is one of the few movie musicals, not just of that age, but ever, that really brings an interesting visual sense to the different dance and music numbers, particularly that final Gotta Dance number that becomes ever so slightly surreal. And it still is a total showstopper. Gene Kelly is great. The whole cast is great in this one, which is also a movie about the end of the silent movie era. So if you're a movie nut like me, you'll really enjoy that plot about sound coming in and changing the way people have to make movies. Again, great movie. Another 5-star movie. White Christmas is another beloved movie musical. It's one that's very important to me, that is one that my wife and I have returned to again and again. It is a lot of fun, but it is not as good as Singing in the Rain. And the reason I kind of put these two together is I watched them sort of back to back not all that long ago. And it's funny, White Christmas feels like a much older musical than Singing in the Rain, and yet it's several years newer. Like they sort of forgot all the things that had happened, innovation-wise and movie-making-wise with Singing in the Rain. White Christmas, it's charming as all heck, but it's a very sort of standard Hollywood movie musical. It's also a movie that seems sort of grumpy about things. It seems like it's a movie made by people who miss the good old days and aren't super happy with the way things are in the world then. There's a couple of songs in it. The choreography song and the Mr. Bones song both are songs about how things aren't the way they used to be. And I think those are a little bit misguided, even though they are kind of fun numbers. Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, they're great in it, though. It's a really fun movie. It just doesn't reach that same pinnacle. 3.5 stars. The Third Man. So this is the Carol Reed British drama starring Joseph Cotten, where Joseph Cotten is an American in, I think, Germany after the Second World War, and he's trying to find this guy Harry Lime that everybody keeps talking about, this smuggler named Harry Lime. Harry, when we finally find him, is memorably played by Orson Welles, one of Welles' greatest performances, especially in a movie that he didn't himself direct. There are a lot of rumors going around that Welles kind of secretly directed this one, but it's just not true. Carol Reed does a superb job with this one. Welles' charisma really kicks it across the finish line. It's a little slow in parts. Great score too, but I'm going to give it 4 stars. If we're gonna do a review show, if we're gonna review every movie ever, and we're gonna talk about classic movies, sooner or later we gotta talk about Citizen Kane. It is the movie that all of the filmmakers and film critics and AFI and everybody always talk about as this is the #1 greatest movie of all time, and I am not going to argue. Citizen Kane, aside from being a technically revolutionary movie, a movie with so many innovations that when you see it now, it's hard to believe that the things that it did first or that it popularized weren't being done all the time. Things like non-linear storytelling, telling a story out of order with a lot of flashbacks, or unreliable narrators where different people are telling us about Kane, but you can't necessarily trust them. Kane, this movie, by the way, is about a newspaper magnate named Kane and Kane's whole life from when he's a little boy up into his death. You get to see all aspects of the man, the good and the bad, and there's a lot of both, maybe more bad than good. It's entertaining as all heck. It's a movie I return to again and again because of how enjoyable a story it is. Not just because it's so quote-unquote good, but because it's a movie that brings a smile to my face every time. There's great drama and great humor and amazing performances, plus the terrific direction, the cinematography by Greg Toland. This is the all-timer of all-timers, unparalleled. I have to give it 5 stars. So after Citizen Kane, Welles' next film as a director, I forgot to mention, Welles directed Citizen Kane, and he did it when he was only like 23, so what have I done with my life? His next movie is The Magnificent Ambersons, which is a sort of a family saga of the Amberson family, starting in the early part of the 20th century, going up into about into the 1930s, and it's a story about how progress has sort of diminished this once great family. Where they're rich and looked up to at the beginning of the movie, and then by the end they're kind of down on their luck and stuff. It's a terrific movie. I think it would really rival Kane. There's so much to love in this movie, especially all the characters. There's an aunt character, and played by Agnes Moorehead. She won an Oscar for this. And Dora from Bewitched, she's an Oscar winner for this movie. She's great. The lead character, the son of the clan, who's a real jerk when he has money, and he's kind of brought humble by not having money. It's an amazing movie. I think it would rival Kane, except that the studio got cold feet and they took it away from Welles and re-edited the last half, shot a new happy ending to it. All of that stuff detracts from it, and unfortunately we don't have that original cut, which to me would be amazing to see. Still, the movie as is still pretty good and pretty entertaining and interesting. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. Again, talking about classic movies, we got to talk about Gone with the Wind. Probably the blockbuster movie of the 1930s, the movie people were lining up for and everybody wanted to talk about. The saga of the Civil War and the South and antebellum South, focused on Scarlett O'Hara and her trials and tribulations. I had not seen this movie up until 5 or 6 years ago, and I decided I finally needed to sit down and watch it. And it is not the movie I thought it would be. First off, it's a great movie. I had thought it would be a fairly straightforward drama. But the thing that I think that's so interesting about it, and the reason it works, sort of like how well Kane works, is that Scarlett O'Hara is not a very likable person for most of the movie. She's a pretty she's a pretty self-centered piece of work, and that kind of turns the movie and everything on its head a little bit and lets you, gives you more to chew on than I think a standard drama would. It's beautifully photographed, looks amazing, very entertaining. Still, it doesn't work for me as well as some of the other movies we're talking about tonight. So personally, I'm going to give it 4 stars. Now, let's jump back. We were talking about Cary Grant a little bit ago. Let's talk about Cary Grant again. Not with Katharine Hepburn this time. This time, Irene Dunne. I think a terrifically today, not then certainly, but today, an underrated film actress and comedian. Very, very funny. I love her and Grant together in this movie. This is not a perfect movie. It's slow in parts, but it's a great screwball comedy where Irene Dunne is trying to fool Cary Grant's family into making them think that she's a different kind of person than she is, and it's another kind of comedy of remarriage movie where they used to be married and now they want to maybe get married again and fall in love together again. It's a really hilarious movie. There's a part in particular where, to get Cary Grant's goat, Irene Dunne pretends to be this sort of like really ditzy, this really, kind of urban woman that, really freaks his family out. That's a hilarious part. This to me is a great movie. Not as great as some, but I think if you haven't seen it, you should. 3.5 stars. Now, I love The Awful Truth, and then Cary Grant and Irene Dunne, they re-team years later in My Favorite Wife. Saw this one recently, hoping to get that magic again, and it's not quite there. There's some fun stuff in this one. This is a movie about a woman who has been stranded on a desert island, and when she comes back, finally gets her way back to America, her husband and their kids have sort of moved on to life without her, and she's trying to get back, fall back in love with her husband. This is a very common theme in movies of that time. And then he gets mad when he meets the guy that she was stranded on the island with, and that guy's in love with her too. It's a funny movie, but it's not super great a lot of the time. It's a movie that feels a little old-fashioned. Even now, like, you look at it and you say, well, this would have worked when these actors were maybe 15 years younger or 10 years younger and in a different time in Hollywood when they were making these kind of movies, but it feels a little out of place. Some good stuff. It's about halfway there for me, so 2.5 stars. And this is going to be, I think, maybe the only foreign film that we're going to deal with today. A German film directed by Fritz Lang. This is an early sound film. And what's interesting about it, stars Peter Lorre, if you guys remember. Peter Lorre, right? He's arguably the star in this one, a murderer who's been murdering. It's a little, I'm not going to lie to you, this is a dark movie, kind of a gruesome movie. It's about all of the people in this German town sort of coming together to hunt down this killer of children, played by Peter Lorre. And the movie is called M, because that's how they end up identifying the killer, is they're looking for him, and when they find him, a guy puts a chalk M for murderer on the back of his coat, and that's how they're able to find him and track him. This movie is really interesting because it's such an early sound film, and Lang is really playing with sound in it, so that for much of the movie, we don't see the murderer's face. He's only identified by a little tune that he whistles. And that makes it, those sort of plays with audio make it particularly interesting. It's a really great movie. Gavin, what did I rate this one again?
4.5.
Yeah, that's right. 4.5 stars. Let's talk Dracula. Dracula's been in movies forever, right? Arguably, the silent great Nosferatu is a Dracula movie. The first proper Dracula movie, 1930s, Todd Browning, the first of the Universal Monsters movies. It's a great movie. Now, there are a lot of, and you guys, the Dracula story, and Bela Lugosi as Dracula. There's not a lot I need to tell you about that. What I will tell you is there's actually an alternate version of this movie that was made for Spanish-speaking audiences, featuring all the same sets and costumes, but featuring a Spanish-speaking cast. That movie was directed by the cinematographer of the English Dracula. At nights, they would film the English version during the day and the Spanish version at nights. A lot of film people, they prefer the Spanish version, not me. I think Todd Browning is a really underrated director. And I think that his eye, like the way he makes his movies kind of murky and bizarre, really appeals to me. And, while there's certainly this lush cinematography in the Spanish version, I think that sort of gross dourness that Browning brings to especially Dracula's castle at the beginning, it was much more interesting to me. So I prefer this one. It's a great movie, 3.5 stars. Now, Bella's back as Dracula years later in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, the first of those movies where Abbott and Costello meet some monsters. This is undoubtedly the best of those movies. Very funny. I particularly like the sequence where there's where Costello is in a freight room at like a train station, and he opens up a coffin and sees the guy in there, and he's freaking out. Funny stuff. Like most, this is the best of those movies for sure, but like all of them, it's prone to kind of bottoming out in parts and getting a little slow. Still very funny. If you haven't seen it, you should. 3.5 stars. Now, let's talk about the Marx Brothers. I love the Marx Brothers. But let's talk first about their first movie, The Coconuts. The Coconuts, it's not there. It's not quite there. The Marx Brothers are in it, and they're fantastic. This is a very early sound film. So part of the problem with this movie is, honestly, it's a little bit hard to hear sometimes. And the Marx Brothers, you got to hear them. Their comedy, not Harpo, but Groucho and Chico, so much of their comedy comes from their language and the way they talk and what they're saying and the puns and things that they're making, the wordplay. This has the famous viaduct joke in it. It's also a movie that gets stopped dead in its tracks for a bunch of musical numbers that don't involve the Marx Brothers at all. Sound was such a novelty then that they were throwing a bunch of stuff into these movies to make them these sort of catch-all type movies. Let's have a song because we can. And so as a result, this one doesn't work that well. There's some funny stuff in it, but there's a lot of stuff you could leave out. 2.5 stars. Now, the Marx Brothers' next movies, definitely one of their best. Things have been figured out technologically by this point, and that's when we get Animal Crackers. This is the one where Groucho is Captain Spaulding, the African explorer, who comes to a big dinner party that's being thrown by Margaret Dumont. Chico and Harpo manage to worm their way in too, and then there's a largely irrelevant story about a painting that has been stolen. Hilarious movie, lots of great set pieces in this one. There's a terrific card playing scene where Chico's cheating at cards and Margaret Dumont doesn't know what's going on. You have the amazing Hooray for Captain Spaulding sequence at the beginning with the Hello, I Must Be Going song. The Marx Brothers are firing on all cylinders in this one. Funny movie, 4.5 stars. Monkey Business. Now we're gonna stick with the Marx Brothers. The next one's Monkey Business. This is a cruise ship kind of one that has I can't remember his name right now, but the famous French actor and singer is in this one. It's this is to me kind of the forgettable one of the early Marx Brothers movies, of their Paramount output. It's pretty funny. It's got some funny stuff in it. But when you think cruise ship and Marx Brothers, you're thinking A Night at the Opera. You're not thinking about this one. It's got some good moments. It's not all the way there, though. 3 stars. Horsefeathers, this is the one where they're in college, where Groucho's the dean of a college. Zeppo, I haven't been mentioning Zeppo in these reviews. Zeppo, the underrated Marx brother. I think that you gotta love Zeppo. He doesn't have, I don't want to call him the straight man because he does a bunch of weird and funny stuff too, but he's the one of the 4 Marx Brothers who doesn't really have that sort of, as vaudeville or ethnic comedy character where Chico's, kind of doing an Italian thing and Groucho's doing a German thing. Zeppo's not really doing a thing, but I think he's still super funny. So this is the one where Zeppo goes to college, Groucho's the head of the college. Of course, Chico and Harpo have managed to work their way in. The great speakeasy sequence is in this one. The great football sequence at the end is in this one. Terrific comedy. I could stand for Margaret Dumont to be in it. I miss her a little bit. The lady who plays the college widow is not, what you want really, but great movie. 4 stars. Duck Soup, the last of the Brothers movies at Paramount, the last with all four Marx Brothers in it, unquestionably their best. Unquestionably. Groucho has just been elected president of a small nation that is threatening to go to war with another nation. So you've got all the great, kind of criticism of war and politics in it. You've got the great, some great lawyer jokes in it. This is the one, too, where all three, Groucho, Chico, and Harpo have the Groucho makeup on, and they're doing the thing where they're both on either side of a doorway, and they think it's a mirror, Harpo's tricking Groucho into thinking it's a mirror. This one's hilarious, and what really puts this one over the top for me is this is the one where they have done, for the most part, done away with a plot. There are the barest trappings of a plot in here, but in all of the other Marx Brothers movies, it's that plot and having to service the plot about the stolen painting, or about the college, and people trying to fix a football game. These they sort of slow the movie down, stop them. Here, they've largely stopped caring about a plot. It's not a very long movie. It's all about the jokes. I've got to give this one 5 stars. Let's shift gears. We're going to stay at least somewhat, or for a little while, in comedy and start talking about Billy Wilder, another one of my favorite directors, a great, great director. So terrific at finding the humor in human life. Some Like It Hot is one of his most famous movies. This is the Marilyn Monroe one with Jack Lemmon, where Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis have to dress up like ladies, and they sort of fall in with Marilyn Monroe. This is a movie that people absolutely love. I have never been that big a fan of it. It's got its moments, but I don't think it matches up to the best of Wilder's stuff. I'm going to give it, but still entertaining. There's a reason that Marilyn Monroe is still a big deal today. She's a terrific movie star and a fun actress. Jack Lemmon, you can't go wrong with him either. 3 stars. Now, The Apartment. Now, that to me, this is... I'm hard pressed to know if I can call this Billy Wilder's best, because we're going to be talking about some other movies that are also arguably his best. But this one is unquestionably my favorite. 1960s satire of sort of office culture. Jack Lemmon is sort of low man on the totem pole at this office, and he sort of is, he's, I don't know if blackmailed's the right word, but pressured. He's pressured into renting out his apartment to his bosses, Fred McMurray and Ray Wise and some other guys, as a place that they can take their mistresses to. Only Jack Lemmon ends up falling in love with Shirley MacLaine, an elevator operator who ends up in a relationship at the same time with Fred McMurray. This is a hilarious movie, but also a movie with a lot of pathos and emotion in it. A great, great, towering achievement of a movie for me. Really understands the human condition and relationships and everything that's good and bad about all of that. 5 stars. Witness for the Prosecution is maybe not as perceptive a movie as some of Billy Wilder's other movies. There's a degree to which I want to call this sort of a slight Billy Wilder movie. It's a courtroom drama through and through. Wilder, directs it with aplomb, and I think what really elevates this one are the performances. Tyrone Power is in this one as a man accused of murder. He's fine. But the reasons to watch this are Marlene Dietrich, who's terrific as sort of Power's German war bride, who is, who can give testimony that's either going to, free him or send him to prison. And then Charles Lawton as the barrister, as the lawyer in this one, defending the case. So amazing, so much fun, and just so engaging and sharp and, intellectual and powerful. He's tremendous in this movie, that while it has a lot of drama in it, has no little bit of humor to it too. Great movie. I'm going to give it 4.5 stars. Now, earlier when I mentioned that I wasn't sure if I could call The Apartment Wilder's best movie, it's because of this one. It's because of Sunset Boulevard. The story of a man, a sort of failed drunk screenwriter who ends up, who kind of just stumbles into the life of this faded silent screen star called Norma Desmond. This is an amazing movie. Again, so perceptive about people and about human life, as he gets wrapped up into this world, into Norma Desmond's bizarre, world, and her, trying to grasp at that last shot of fame. he's dealing with, what he's, becoming one of her flunkies and sort of her kept man, and trying to write this impossible screenplay for her as a comeback. It's an amazing, amazing movie. If you haven't seen it, you need to see this one. It has some elements of noir in it, some great elements if you're a fan of movies and movie making. 5 stars. Now, if you're looking for a comedy that's just a hoot, though, try It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. This is a big chase film across the whole country. Every comedian ever pretty much is in it, from Jonathan Winters to Milton Berle, to Sid Caesar, with great cameos by like Jerry Lewis and the Three Stooges and Jack Benny. It's a fun movie. It's super long, which works against it sometimes. And it's another one of those movies that I think if it had been made maybe 10 years earlier and caught all of the players at their peak, it would be funnier. But it's still a really fun time. 3 stars. So for a lot of you, I'm sure you're thinking we can't have a classic movie, classic Hollywood special without talking about Casablanca. Casablanca is, to me, in a lot of ways, a movie that should not be as good as it is. It does have a great idea and a great plot around it, with Humphrey Bogart as a man running a sort of restaurant and bar in Casablanca in Africa and during the Second World War, that's supposed to be sort of a neutral ground for Americans and the French resistance and the Nazis even. And when suddenly Ingrid Bergman, who had been his old flame, comes back into his life, they rekindle their romance, but for the sake of the war effort, she's going to have to go away with this other man again. It's a great love story, a great tragic love story. So many great moments and iconic moments and actors and performances in it. It's a movie that never had a finished script, really, when they started filming it. They were writing a lot on the day. It got passed from one director to another. There was so much chaos in the making of this movie, and yet you can't see a bit of it on the screen. It's a sublime movie. Very much a classic, perfect movie in that Hollywood studio sense. It's a great movie to end our show on today. 5 stars. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to come back next time and talk about more movies, and we're going to keep trying to review every movie ever.